Hi, John McElroy here, talking all things automotive. Today I'm talking with John Motlow. He's the Chief Strategy Officer of a company called Zero EI. And John, correct me if I'm wrong, Zero Emissions Industries, is that right?
Zero Emission Industries, yeah.
And you guys are into fuel cells.
We are working hard to make hydrogen work well in the real world.
Where do you see it going right now? Because it seems to me automakers are backing off a bit. Honda just cut back on an expansion it was going to do. Honda and General Motors looks like they've drifted apart in their fuel cell work. But where do you see it going, at least in automotive for right now?
I think with kind of global volatility and then the way this space is shifting consumer sentiments, I think it's going to be if I'm being, let's call it conservative, I think it's going to be a small but impactful part of the market. Fuel cells need to show what they can really do and where they make sense. There is a lot of investment and capital that's been deployed on the hydrogen infrastructure. Those projects need to fully come online. On the light duty side, I think there'll probably be some exciting things between fuel cells and the hydrogen ICE world in motorsport. And I think that will help. But I think it's going to take a few years before we see, any significant movement on the automotive side.
In the meantime, you guys have got some interesting applications. Because I was looking at your website there. What's this thing that you call FTKS?
So that's our man-portable hydrogen refueling system. Long story short, when we founded this company, the first thing that we did was a fully inspected passenger ferry, and it was the world's first real commercial fuel cell powered ferry. In order for that boat to actually run, it needed hydrogen, and asking someone to invest millions of dollars on a dockside piece of refueling infrastructure seemed like a pretty big ask. So my co-founder, Dr. Joe Pratt, had some ideas on how we could actually integrate the refueling into that vessel. And we built that, and it worked really well. And then we took a kind of look at it and squinted and turned our head sideways and how small can we make this? And so few internal generations, development later, we're able to package everything into a carry-on suitcase size box that enables kind of anyone to, as long as there's a source of hydrogen truck, tank, whatever, be able to simply transfer that hydrogen from the storage vessel into a vehicle. And so that recently enabled Honda Racing to take their car and compete in the Pikes Peak International Hill Climb, which was
so wait a minute. You mean Honda was using your fuel cell in their Pikes Peak car?
Not our fuel cell, our refueling system. So they, Honda's fuel cell, they took a CRV, the new hydrogen CRV. There was some nice, race wheels and race tires on it, put a cage in it, but pretty much a stock CRV. But at Pikes Peak, there's no hydrogen around. So the only way they could actually fuel it, it turns out, is our technology and our solution. So we're really proud to be part of that and help them successfully compete.
So I guess I'm not fully following here. What is your refueling system?
So if we think about gasoline, the cool thing about gasoline is it's very energy dense and liquid at room temperature. So, you can pour it from one bucket into another. Makes refueling really easy. Take your, refueling can, fill your dirt bike, or, get stranded, walk, good old days, walk to a gas station, walk back. Hydrogen, unfortunately, it's, as I know you're aware, but your, audience may not be, hydrogen's liquid only when it's very, very, very cold. And so at normal temperatures, it's a gas. And the way that we store that gas to really use it in vehicles is under really high pressure. So being able to just transfer high pressure gas from one thing into another is quite technically complicated, especially to do it well and to do it really safely. And so essentially what this suitcase does is it makes it as easy as pouring, something from one bucket into another. but doing that with gas. So you take your hydrogen source, high pressure hydrogen source. Now, how do we get the hydrogen from that source, be it a tank on a truck or a tank installed, and how do we get it into the vehicle? And so that's what that does.
Is this similar to the cryo pump that Bosch is talking about?
Similar. So that's for liquid hydrogen, and that's a really cool piece of technology to be able to, fill hydrogen semi trucks. I think they're talking 10-minute fills reliably. Cryo pumps are pretty tricky. Once again, it's really cold. What this does is it, in a similar way to the hydrogen retail gas stations that are in California, those are kind of let's call it a previous generation of technology, an older architecture. They're really big. They're expensive. They have a lot of moving parts. They're optimized to get kind of the fastest possible, or at the time when they were initially designed and developed, Toyota was a big part of that. The fastest possible fill, 3.5, 4-minute fills. They have pre-cooling. Our system, we realized that in most cases, you don't really need pre-cooling, and we can get pretty close. So we were able to take something that is typically the size of let's call it like a shipping container, and get it down to the size of a suitcase, just to make it easy. So if you're, I don't know, let's go with Budweiser, not for any, not working with them, just an example of someone who moves a lot of stuff on the road, and you want to do a pilot fleet of fuel cell trucks, be it from, like Hyundais. If you want to put them, into operation, you have to deal with the challenge of where do I get the hydrogen and how much do I have to spend on infrastructure at my facilities to be able to actually run them. Now we can decrease the time and the dollars significantly, saying, hey, you got your trucks? Okay, cool. Now a company like First Element, who's making the cryo pump you mentioned, well, they have a lot of hydrogen tube trailer trucks in service. They can go drop a truck off, just the trailer, park the trailer in a parking lot, and the team running those trucks can bring out an FTKS and fill their trucks. And then when that trailer is empty, they First Element can drop and swap those trailers. And now your cost and your time for that deployment has been significantly decreased.
So your FTKS is literally taking gaseous hydrogen and converting it into liquid to pump right into a vehicle. Or whatever.
It's gas to gas. So a lot of the vehicles on the road right now are running gas. The Toyota Mirai, the Hyundai trucks. There are some really cool next generation stuff that's going into liquid, which I think is a really exciting development. But right now, most of the stuff on the road is gaseous, high pressure gas.
So your system is what? Just maintaining that gas at a high pressure?
Yeah, managing the flow. Gonna maybe get a little nerdy on the details.
Go ahead. Yeah.
What we're focused on is making sure that the tanks in the vehicle don't get too hot. When we're transferring really high pressure gas, there can be quite a bit of heat, and the kind of common tank construction is what's called a Type 4 carbon overwrap pressure vessel. So it's a carbon fiber tank. And if it gets too hot, it can compromise the strength of that tank. So the vehicle OEMs are very concerned about people trying to manually fill the tanks themselves without, technology or pre-cooling or a communications protocol between the vehicle and the hydrogen source. So that's a big part of technically what the FTKS does is make sure that the tanks are filled the way that they need to be to not void warranty or increase risk. The other part of it is, we're talking in many cases about 10,000 PSI hydrogen. And so your normal person, that's, maybe 10 times higher pressure than anything they've ever even heard of. So a big part of that was packaging it and doing it safely enough and easy enough that people can get comfortable with, with the right technology, I don't need to be concerned that I'm dealing with something this high of pressure, which, to normal people, and very understandably so, can be a little nervous making when you hear, oh, wait, that's 10,000 PSI. Yeah. So it's managing everything that goes into that, but really technically it's about not damaging the actual vehicle while still maintaining the ability to refuel quickly.
Got it. I also understand the military's interested in this application.
Yeah. So, the FT case is no one's going to buy anything that runs on hydrogen if you can't get hydrogen. It's one of the biggest challenges with adoption. So, for rapid deployment, we have a great solution for that. So, what the military is really interested is in today's world, it's signal management, specifically thermal. That's a big challenge. We've seen, with Ukraine, what happens when you have a lot of very low cost, let's say drones that have thermal imaging capability, thermal sensors that up until very recently were export controlled and very expensive. Now you can buy them on Alibaba for, hundreds or thousands of dollars, very cheap. That adds a whole new type of threat where now even your big main battle tanks are under threat from, guys sitting 30, 40 kilometers away in a trench piloting FPV drones. And the second you turn your tank on, they're like, oh, target. Okay, we'll go fly over there. So it's top of mind. And the cool thing about our fuel cell architecture and the products that we're building is they take advantage of being very low temperature. So the primary driver there is managing, we have all the upsides of electric. So very, very quiet operation, very, very, very low thermal. And now we can, refill / recharge very, very quickly. And then hydrogen has the ability, and the technology we're developing and working with others on is to ultimately make hydrogen, at quote unquote, the tactical edge of the battlefield in situ from various water sources. And so that kind of flexibility is very interesting to DoD.
Hey, another thing that I find interesting is, I always thought you had to manufacture hydrogen, but in the last couple of years or so, I know it goes back earlier than that, but in the last couple of years, there's been a lot of interest in what they call geologic hydrogen or white hydrogen, where you literally can drill into the ground and get this stuff. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think it's great. I think it's exciting. I think it's just another pathway to get people to wrap their heads around hydrogen and the fact that it's there and is so similar to the energy ecosystem today. I think just the psychology of it helps as well. But the more hydrogen options we have, the easier it becomes. So I'm not by no means a geologist and have not focused, I've not spent huge amounts of time in the Permian Basin drilling for minerals. But from what I've read from the Sandia reports and talking to a few knowledgeable people, it seems really exciting. And I think it offers an additional great pathway for low cost hydrogen, which will be very useful. I think that's part of, the automotive use case. I'm big car guy. Most of the team here is very motorsport. But cars are part of a bigger ecosystem. Hydrogen has so much fundamental utility that the more things that use it, the cheaper and more familiar everyone gets with it, which is ultimately will impact the total cost of ownership of any mobility platform type of vehicle, including a car. And I think is in the long term one of the reasons why we're very optimistic that it will become a big part of the kind of energy and power mix in the future. And happy to expand on any of those things. There's a lot there.
Yeah. No, that's all the questions that I have right now. But am I missing anything that you'd like to add?
I think we're, looking at the car side of things, what, my personal opinion, as an enthusiast and someone working in the industry, what's missing right now is the thing that makes hydrogen cool. There's some cool stuff that's coming out. It's starting to be pushed, but Really excited about some of the internal combustion stuff that Toyota's been doing. But we need a reason to get people excited that's in addition to decarbonization or a reduction or removal of air pollution. I think,
well, as you know, motorsports is a great way to do that. And the WEC, the World Endurance Championship, I believe, is looking at a hydrogen category coming up in a number of years now.
Exactly. And I think things like that are going to go a long way to getting, people to understand what is possible and that it's cool. I think, Tesla did a really good job with that. The performance of their early cars was really exciting. To get that kind of acceleration in a car that was, at least somewhat attainable compared to what you'd have to spend to get something similar was a big deal. And I think that I'm not sure that that's talked about quite as much as it should be when we're talking about changing technologies of something that, especially, here in the US, is so core to our identity.
Yeah, that's right. Well, John, thanks so much for your time today. Much appreciated.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you so much. It was great talking to you.
Do you want to see the automotive industry grow and thrive? So do we. That's why we dedicate our shows to providing the people in the industry with important data and information, and access to the people who are driving the industry forward with the guests that we bring on our shows and the interviews that we conduct. But we need your help to continue doing it. That's why I'm asking you to support Autoline with a YouTube or Patreon membership. It'll get you extra content that will be available only to members, but it will especially make sure that you and Autoline continue to drive the automotive industry forward.